I always thought my sister, Mia, was selfish, but the night she sent her kids to my apartment in a taxi, after I had explicitly told her I couldn't babysit, redefined the word in ways I didn't know were possible, because it wasn't just irritation or irresponsibility this time. It was something unhinged, desperate, and terrifying wrapped in the flimsy excuse of I had no choice. And as I stood in the dim hallway of my Seattle apartment building in my pajamas, hair a mess, holding a bag of takeout noodles I hadn't even had time to open, I stared in disbelief at the cab driver, who looked equally uncomfortable as he pointed to the two shivering kids in the back seat, saying, "Ma'am, their mother said you'd take them for the night." And when I asked where she went, he scratched his head, shrugging helplessly. She didn't say, just handed me $100 and walked away fast. And the moment those words hit the air, something cold twisted in my chest, because Mia might have been a disaster of a person, late to everything, disastrous relationships, always relying on everyone else to fix her messes. But she was never careless with the kids. Reckless with herself, yes, but never with Lily and Jackson, who were now staring at me with wide, confused eyes from the back seat, clutching backpacks to their chests like they were on the run from something. I knelt down beside the taxi door, trying to keep my voice steady as I said, "Hey Munchkins, where's Mom?" But Lily, the older one, only shook her head, lip trembling, and whispered, "She said we had to go. She said you'd keep us safe." And I felt my stomach drop because safe from what? From who? As the cab pulled away, leaving the three of us standing in the cold hallway, my mind churned with questions and irritation and fear I didn't want to name, and I ushered the kids inside, locking the door behind us out of instinct. My apartment was small, a studio converted into a pseudo one-bedroom with thin walls and cheap fixtures. But tonight it suddenly felt like a shelter in a storm I didn't know was coming, and as Lily sat on the couch and Jackson curled into her lap, I heated up cocoa for them, watching them in the soft kitchen light, their faces pale, clothes a little dirty, backpacks filled with clothes that looked hastily packed. Something was very wrong. Mia had called me earlier that day, voice brittle and rushed, asking if I could watch the kids just for the night, and I had told her, gently but firmly, that I was drowning in work, that my new job at the marketing firm had me on a brutal deadline, that I couldn't be responsible for two small children on a night I needed to be on calls until midnight. She'd sighed, said fine, and hung up in that clipped way she did when she was irritated. But this wasn't irritation. This was panic. I sat beside Lily on the couch and gently pushed her hair behind her ear, asking, "Did Mom say anything? Anything at all?" And she hesitated before whispering. She said if someone came to the door, don't open it, which made my entire body stiffen, because Mia wasn't the type to say ominous things like that. She was dramatic, yes, but not fearful, not cryptic. Jackson tugged at my sleeve then, holding out something small, a folded scrap of paper clenched tight in his fist. "Mom said to give you this," he said softly, and I unfolded it, expecting a sloppy apology, maybe a rushed explanation, but instead the note hit me like a punch. "If they ask, you haven't seen me." No name. No details. Just those 8 words scribbled so quickly the ink trailed off at the end, like she wrote it while running. My pulse hammered as I read it again and again, each time feeling the panic inch higher up my spine. Who was they? Why was she hiding? Why send her kids away instead of taking them with her? And then the worst question of all hit me. Why did she think someone might come looking for her at all? The kids started nodding off on the couch, exhaustion hitting them like a wave, and I tucked a blanket over their small bodies while my mind raced through every possible explanation. Maybe Mia owed someone money. God knows she picked terrible boyfriends and even worse business partners. Maybe she'd gotten in trouble again. Maybe she'd panicked. But none of those explanations justified the fear in that note, or the way her kids looked like they hadn't eaten a proper meal in a day, or the bruise I suddenly noticed beneath Lily's sleeve when she shifted in her sleep. I felt my chest tighten as I paced my apartment, Every step louder in the quiet room, and after 30 minutes of mentally spiraling, I grabbed my phone and called Mia. Straight to voicemail. I called again. And again. And again. No response. I sent a text. Mia, where are you? What happened? The kids are safe. Call me. Nothing. I tried her boyfriend, her coworkers, even our estranged mother in Florida, but no one had heard from her in days. Days. That word echoed in my head like a warning siren. The clock on my microwave blinked 10:43 p.m. when there was a loud knock at my door that made me freeze mid-step. Not a soft neighborly tap. Not a friendly rhythm. A heavy, deliberate knock that rattled my cheap wooden door in its frame. My heart stopped. I crept toward the peephole, praying it was a random drunk neighbor or someone with the wrong apartment, but when I looked through, my blood ran cold. It was a man in a dark coat, standing too still, too tall, with a posture that radiated authority or danger. I couldn't tell which, and beside him was another man, shorter but broad, both staring straight ahead at my door like they knew someone was inside. I stepped back slowly, adrenaline surging, and the bigger man knocked again, harder this time, calling out in a calm, chilling voice, "Miss Caldwell? We need to speak with you about your sister." My breath caught. Mia. They knew where to find her. They knew where to find me. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The kids stirred on the couch at the sound, and I placed a finger over my lips, silently begging them to stay quiet, praying the men didn't hear. The smaller man spoke this time, voice firmer. "We have reason to believe she's in danger, her children. Please open the door." I felt fury spike in my chest. Mia might have made bad decisions, but she loved her kids more than anything. But something in his tone told me this wasn't CPS or police. They weren't giving details, weren't identifying themselves, weren't mentioning warrants or cases or procedures. They just wanted in. My voice shook as I whispered through the door. "Who are you?" The bigger man answered simply, "We work with your sister. She owes us information. We believe she left it with you." My stomach twisted violently. Information. Not money. Not custody. Information. Something she hid. Something she passed to me without telling me what it was. My eyes darted to the kids, their backpacks on the floor. Their backpacks. I grabbed Lily's first, quietly, carefully, unzipping the front compartment, and froze. Inside was a phone wrapped in tape, a USB drive, and an envelope labeled with my name. My heart thundered. She had sent me something, and these men knew it. I zipped the backpack shut softly just as the knocking intensified, louder, harder, the big man's voice turning sharp. "Miss Caldwell, this is your final warning." And I grabbed the kids, shaking them awake as gently as possible, whispering, "We need to go. Now." I didn't have time to think. I barely had time to breathe as I scooped Jackson into my arms and guided a half-asleep, trembling Lily toward the fire escape door in my kitchen while the pounding at the front door grew harder, angrier, more impatient, rattling the frame like it was going to splinter apart at any second, and the man's voice boomed through the thin wood again. "Open the door, Miss Caldwell." But I ignored it as I unlatched the fire escape, praying it didn't screech the way it usually did when I kicked it open to smoke on bad nights. Luck, for once, was on my side. The hinge creaked but didn't scream, and I pulled both kids out into the freezing night air, guiding them down the metal stairs as quietly as possible, each step vibrating through my bones as the pounding behind us got louder, more frantic. Halfway down the stairs, I heard the unmistakable sound of my front door being rammed, and my mind raced. How long until they broke in, realized we were gone, swarmed the back alley? I needed a plan, fast. My car was parked on the street, but going through the front meant crossing the hallway they were in. The alley emptied into the next street over, but it would take us straight past the communal dumpsters and into the open. Too exposed. Then Lily tugged my sleeve and whispered, voice shaky but sharp, "Aunt Erin." Mom said if anything bad happened, we had to run toward the lights, and I blinked at her, confused, until I remembered. 2 blocks from my building was a late-night diner, neon bright and open until 3 a.m., always busy, always loud, always full of witnesses. It wasn't safety, but it was visibility, and right now visibility was our only shield. I grabbed her hand, Jackson's weight heavy against my shoulder, and whispered, "Okay, sweetheart. We're going to the lights." We reached the bottom of the fire escape, boots hitting the wet pavement, and I hurried the kids into the alley just as I heard the splinter of my apartment door bursting open. Fear sprinted up my spine like ice water, but I didn't look back. I just ran, pulling the kids with me, hearts pounding, breath turning into clouds in the Seattle cold. As we reached the street, neon signs reflected off rain-soaked pavement, cars whooshed by, and the diner's warm glow flickered like a beacon. I tightened my grip on the kids, pushing through the cold air until we reached the front door and practically fell inside, the bell chiming overhead. Warmth and noise flooded us. Waitresses calling orders, fryer sizzling, jazz playing from an old radio, and for a second, just one tiny second, I let myself believe we'd outrun danger. I guided the kids into a booth in the back corner, the farthest from the windows, and only when they were seated did my knees finally begin to shake. I flagged down a waitress, ordered pancakes and hot chocolate for both kids, and when she asked softly, "Rough night?" I could only nod, too out of breath, too overwhelmed to lie. Once she walked away, I dug into Lily's backpack again with shaking hands, pulling out the taped phone, the USB drive, and the envelope. My name written in Mia's rushed handwriting. I tore it open, half afraid of what I'd find, and inside was a single sheet of paper with 2 sentences. "Don't tell anyone what's in the drive. Don't give it to anyone unless I say." That was it. No explanation. No reassurance. No details. Just orders. My frustration flared at the same time fear knotted tighter in my chest. What could possibly be so important that she'd send her kids away like cargo, trusting me with something men were willing to hunt us down to find? I examined the USB drive, a matte black device with no markings, no brand, just metal and weight, and I reached for my laptop before remembering the warnings in movies and crime stories. Never plug in a device when you don't know what it contains. Instead, I powered my phone and searched for a number I hoped still worked. Daniel, an IT guy from my office who owed me a favor after I covered for him during a disastrous Zoom presentation. I texted him. "Emergency. Need you to check a USB for malware. No questions." He replied in under 10 seconds. "Bring it now." Which meant I'd have to leave the safety of the diner. My pulse hammered again. I looked at the kids, still shaking, still sipping cocoa with trembling hands, and my protective instinct screamed. I couldn't drag them deeper into danger, but I also couldn't leave them alone. As I weighed the impossible options, the bell above the diner door chimed again, and my heart plummeted. The 2 men were outside. Not in the diner. Not yet, but scanning the sidewalk, looking into each window with predatory calm. I ducked down instantly, pulling the kids with me under the table, whispering, "Don't look up. Stay quiet." Lily grabbed Jackson and held him tight against her chest as the shadows of the men passed across the glass. I felt sweat slide down my back despite the cold, every nerve on fire. They stood outside for a full minute, scanning, searching for 3 figures who didn't exist in this moment because we'd folded ourselves into shadows. But then the taller man lifted his phone and spoke into it. Voice muffled through the glass, but not enough that I couldn't hear. She ran. "She has the kids. They won't get far." My blood ran cold. They weren't giving up. They weren't waiting. They were hunting. After what felt like hours, but was probably less than 60 seconds, they moved on, walking down the sidewalk toward the corner, and I waited until they disappeared from view before slowly pulling the kids back into their seats. Both were pale, wide-eyed, traumatized, and I forced my voice to stay steady as I said, "We're leaving through the back. Quietly." I paid the bill, tipped more than I could afford, and headed toward the kitchen exit, pushing through metal doors into an alley that smelled of flour and diesel. I kept one hand on Lily, one arm around Jackson, and hurried into the night again. But as we reached the opposite sidewalk, a car rolled slowly toward us, headlights bright, engine low. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought it was them, but when the window rolled down, relief hit me so hard I felt dizzy. It was Alex, my downstairs neighbor, and the closest thing I had to a reliable friend in this building. He was wearing sweats and a beanie and had a grocery bag on the passenger seat. "Errands," he said, shocked at the sight of us in the cold. The kids shaking, my hair wild. "What the hell, are you okay?" I didn't even bother lying. "No. I need a ride. Now." His expression hardened instantly as he unlocked the doors, and I got the kids inside before giving him the short, horrifying version. Men were after my sister, they were after the kids and me, and I needed to get to Capitol Hill to meet someone who could check a USB drive. Alex didn't ask unnecessary questions, just drove, with tight knuckles and sharp eyes scanning mirrors like a soldier. 20 minutes later, after weaving through traffic and checking for tails, we stopped outside my office building where Daniel waited under the awning, hands in his pockets, frown deepened by confusion. "What's going on?" he asked as we approached, but I shoved the drive at him and whispered fiercely, "Please. Now." He didn't argue, just guided us into the empty lobby and plugged the drive into a secure workstation, his fingers flying over the keyboard as the screen filled with code and encrypted files. After several minutes of silence, he turned slowly toward me, face pale, eyes wide, voice barely audible. "Aaron, this isn't normal data. This is evidence." My heart dropped. "Evidence of what?" He swallowed hard. "Financial crimes. Laundering. Fraud. Names of people in government. People in corporations. Milio. Maybe billions." My breath hitched. Mia wasn't running from debt. She was running from giants. "Someone trusted your sister," Daniel whispered, "and she didn't play along." Before I could respond, Alex stiffened beside me, looking past us toward the glass doors. I followed his gaze. The two men were across the street, watching, waiting. And Daniel whispered what all of us already felt. "They know we're here." For a split second, none of us moved. Daniel frozen at his keyboard, Alex stiff beside me like he was ready to throw himself between us and danger. The kids huddled behind my legs, small and shaking, and through the glass of the lobby doors, the two men stood beneath the street lamp like shadows given human form, their expressions unreadable, but their intent unmistakable. They weren't leaving without what they came for, and unfortunately, what they came for was now sitting in Daniel's workstation, glowing on the monitor like a lit fuse. Daniel swallowed, eyes fixed on the screen as he whispered, "Aaron, this drive? It's federal-level evidence. This isn't just about some shady men. This is the kind of stuff agencies kill to protect, or kill to bury." My stomach twisted violently as I whispered back, "Can you copy it?" He shook his head frantically. I tried. "It's locked behind 5 layers of encryption. You'd need military-grade tools. Whoever gave this to your sister, they trusted her with something enormous." The elevator dinged in the distance, but none of us dared to breathe. My heart was beating so loud I was sure the men outside could hear it through the glass. Alex stepped closer to me, lowering his voice to a razor-thin whisper. "We can't stay here. We have seconds before they try coming in." And he was right. The taller man had stepped off the curb now, crossing the street at a slow, deliberate pace, eyes locked on the lobby door. His partner followed, glancing up and down the block like he was checking for witnesses, but this part of Seattle was quiet after 10 p.m. Office buildings dark, streets mostly empty, no one to help us, no one to see what would happen if those men walked through the door. My pulse spiked into panic as I grabbed the USB drive from Daniel's workstation, yanking it out even as the screen flashed a warning, and shoved it deep into my coat pocket. "Aaron." Daniel hissed, but I cut him off. We move. Now. Alex didn't waste a second. He grabbed Jackson's hand with one arm and scooped up Lily with the other, whispering, "Hold on tight, sweetheart," as he steered us toward the emergency exit at the far end of the lobby. The lobby lights flickered, a power surge. Someone was tampering with the building's electrical box. "They're trying to cut the power," Daniel whispered, horrified. "Why?" I spat back. He gave me the answer I didn't want. Because darkness hides screams. My hands went cold. I pushed us forward faster as the taller man reached the front door, tried the handle, then looked up and grinned when he realized he had found us. "Move!" I screamed, and all four of us sprinted through the emergency door into a narrow stairwell that echoed with our footsteps. Alex slammed the metal door behind us, but even before it clanged shut, we heard the men entering the lobby. They were inside. They were close. The stairwell smelled like metal and bleach, and our footsteps pounded as we flew down 2 flights, crowding into the basement corridor that led to the underground parking garage. My breath was burning, loud, wild, but the fear was louder. Fear that if they caught us, we wouldn't walk out. Alex scanned ahead and cursed. "My car's outside. They'll see us if we go out the garage front." Daniel, panting, pointed toward a storage room near the back wall. "There's a service tunnel that connects to the adjacent building's garage. Maintenance uses it. It might not be locked." "Might?" Alex hissed, but we were out of options. We ran. The basement lights blinked again. Another surge, and I felt the terror creeping up from the floor like rising water. We reached the door to the service tunnel, locked with a padlock. "Move," Alex snarled, pulling a crowbar from a toolbox on the wall. He cracked the lock in 3 brutal hits just as the stairwell door slammed open behind us and footsteps thundered into the garage. "Go!" Alex yelled, shoving us through the tunnel. I grabbed Jackson, who was sobbing quietly, and pushed him ahead of me while Daniel held the door shut. The tunnel was dark, narrow, and smelled of rust and dust, but we didn't stop moving, didn't look back. When we reached the other side, a second, older garage, we burst through the exit door and into the open building lot behind it. None of us were prepared for what we saw. 3 black SUVs parked in a row, engines running, men in dark coats standing beside them like a coordinated unit. My heart dropped. "Oh my God," Daniel whispered. "They're not alone." One of the men turned his head, saw us, and shouted, "There, grab the girl and the kids." The world split open. Alex grabbed my arm and yanked me backward behind a parked sedan as gunmetal flashed in the hands of one of the men. He wasn't pointing it at us, but he had won. A gun. This was real. This wasn't movie fear. This was life or death fear. I pressed the kids to the ground behind the wheels of the car as the men surged forward, 2 running, one circling toward the alley, the others moving with terrifying precision like they had trained for this exact moment. Daniel's voice shook as he whispered, "They're going to box us in." My mind raced, darting through options until it landed on one insane, impossible plan. My office building sat beside an old hotel that had a delivery alley with cameras. If we made it there, there would be footage, witnesses, cars, lights. Too much exposure for them to risk snatching us. "We run to the hotel," I said frantically. "The alley behind it." Alex nodded, gripping the kids tighter. "On my mark." The men closed in fast. Too fast. Too organized. "Now." Alex barked and we bolted. The world blurred into a sprint of fear and adrenaline as we raced across the garage lot, weaving between cars, dodging shadows. Footsteps thundered behind us. Closer, faster, relentless. Jackson was crying, Lily gasping, my lungs burning, but the hotel alley was ahead, only 50 feet away. 40, 30. A man lunged from the side, grabbing for Lily's arm, but Alex swung his elbow with brutal force, knocking the man back as Lily screamed. We stumbled, regained balance, and kept running. 20 feet. 15. 10. Then headlights flashed. A car screeched into the alley entrance and blocked our path. A fourth man stepped out. And my stomach collapsed when I recognized him. It was Mia's boyfriend. Tall, charming, always smiling, except he wasn't smiling now. His expression was hard, cold, cruel. "Aaron," he said calmly, "you have something that belongs to us." Lily whimpered, "Uncle Theo?" And the betrayal in her voice nearly shattered me. Theo sighed, like he was exhausted by all this, and said, "Get in the car. All of you. No one needs to be hurt, but you're not walking out until we have the drive." He held out his hand, waiting, expecting. And I finally understood. Mia hadn't been running from strangers. She'd been running from him. From the man she trusted. The man who slept in her bed. The father figure she let into her children's lives. He took a step closer, and I backed up, clutching the USB drive in my fist like a weapon, even though it was just a piece of plastic. "Give it to me," Theo said quietly. "I won't ask again." The men behind us closed in, blocking every path, every escape, every ounce of hope. My heart thundered against my ribs. The kids were shaking. Alex's breath was ragged. Daniel's hands trembled. And Theo stepped close enough that his breath touched my cheek as he whispered, "Your sister made a mistake. Don't make the same one." A single thought slammed through me like lightning. If I gave up the drive, Mia was dead. I didn't know where she was hiding, but I knew these men weren't looking for forgiveness. They wanted silence. And then something happened that none of us expected. From behind Theo, a voice whispered sharply, "Aaron, run." Mia, for a heartbeat, the entire alley froze. Theo turned sharply. The men behind us stiffened. Alex sucked in a breath. Daniel choked on a curse, and Lily gasped her mother's name so softly it broke something inside me. But I didn't dare turn around, didn't dare move, didn't dare believe she was actually there until I heard her footsteps, quick and uneven, coming from behind the SUV parked across the alley, and then Mia emerged from the shadows, hair wild, clothes dirty, fear etched so deep into her face it made her look older, smaller, like a person who had been running for days without sleep. Her eyes locked onto mine with a plea so raw it sliced my chest open, but when she looked at Theo, that plea turned into something sharper, rage, betrayal, heartbreak sharpened into a weapon, and she said in a trembling voice that somehow still carried strength, "Theo, stop. This ends now." Theo's jaw tightened, eyes narrowing in a way I remembered from family dinners where he pretended to be harmless, except now the mask was gone. "Mia," he said, his tone icy, "you're making this worse. You should have come with me when I told you to." She laughed, hollow, painful. "You mean when you asked me to hand over evidence that could put half your partners in prison?" "No, thank you." Theo stepped closer, and the light from the street lamp caught the fury in his eyes. "You don't understand what you stole. You don't understand the people involved." Mia shook her head hard, stepping protectively toward her children. "I didn't steal anything. I found out what you were doing. The shell companies. The offshore accounts. The laundering through my workplace. Yes, Theo, I saw the files. All of them. And then I found out you used my name on some of the transfers." My breath caught. He framed her. "I didn't put you in danger," Theo said coolly. "You put yourself there when you snooped." Mia's voice broke. "I saw my name on a $6 million transfer to a company that doesn't exist, Theo." "Because you were easy to control," he snapped. "Until you weren't." Lily whimpered. Jackson clung to Alex's neck with small shaking hands, and I felt my rage swell like a storm, because everything snapped into place now. The fear, the taxi, the note, the bruise under Lily's sleeve, the way Mia had vanished. She wasn't running from motherhood. She was running from a criminal network her boyfriend worked for. Theo held out his hand again, slow, patient, confident. "Aaron."
The drive.
We're not leaving without it. My fingers dug deeper into my pocket, where the USB felt like a burning coal. No, I said, surprising even myself with the steadiness in my voice. You're not getting it. Theo tilted his head, studying me with predatory calm. You're brave tonight. Stupid, but brave. You think you're protecting her. He gestured toward Mia. That drive doesn't save her. It buries her. There are names on it who don't tolerate loose ends. Your sister is a loose end. Mia flinched, but she didn't back away. Instead, she stepped between the kids and the men, shielding them with her own body, and said quietly, "If you want the drive, you'll have to go through me." Theo sighed like a disappointed parent. I always admired your loyalty. Shame it won't help you now. He nodded at the men behind him. 3 stepped forward in perfect formation, and I braced myself for violence I had no way to fight back against until something unexpected happened. The alley lights flickered. Once, twice. And then brightened. Fully. The shadows vanished. The entire alley lit up like a stage. And then sirens. Loud, wailing, getting closer by the second. Theo's head snapped toward the street entrance, confusion flashing across his face, and Mia whispered urgently. I called them. Before I ran. Before I sent the kids. I told them everything. Theo's expression darkened with pure venom. You stupid, stupid woman. But Mia wasn't stupid, not this time. As the sirens grew louder, echoing off brick walls, she finally stepped back toward us, shoulders straight, voice steady even as her hands trembled. I knew you'd come for them. That's why I left the drive with Aaron. Because you'd never expect her. You always underestimated her. And in that moment, the chaos, the fear, the pounding sirens, I felt something rise in me, something fierce and protective and done being scared. We need to move, Alex whispered urgently. The cops won't know who's who. But before we could move, everything erupted at once. Theo barked, "Get the drive." The men lunged forward. I shoved Lily and Jackson behind Daniel and ran in the opposite direction, forcing the men to follow me instead of the kids. Aaron, Alex shouted, but I didn't look back. I sprinted deeper into the alley, clutching the USB in my fist so hard the edges cut my palm. Footsteps thundered behind me. 2 men, fast, trained, relentless. I darted behind dumpsters, around crates, weaving through the maze of the alley, lungs burning, legs screaming, heart exploding, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Not with everything at stake. The sirens reached the alley entrance, blue and red lights flashing like salvation, but one man caught up, grabbing my jacket, yanking me backward. I slammed into the pavement, pain flaring up my spine, but adrenaline kept me moving. I twisted, kicked, scrambled, nails digging into grime as I fought to crawl away. Give it up, he snarled, reaching for my pocket. But before he could grab the drive, tires screeched. A police cruiser skidded into the alley. 4 officers jumped out, guns drawn, shouting commands. The man bolted. The second man froze. Theo and the others sprinted toward the opposite street. Chaos exploded everywhere, shouting, footsteps, the kids screaming for me, Mia yelling my name. And I climbed to my feet, wobbling, clutching the USB with blood and grit under my nails. An officer grabbed my arm, demanding, "Are you hurt? Who's chasing you? What's going on?" But the words I needed to say jammed in my throat, and all I managed was, the kids, they're my sisters. She's being hunted, please, help them, help her." The officers rushed toward the group by the hotel, pinning one man down, chasing the others around the corner. Meanwhile, Mia ran to me, knees hitting the pavement as she pulled me into a shaking hug, whispering, I'm so sorry. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't know what else to do. He said he would take them if I didn't give him the drive. Aaron, I had to protect them. I had to. And I felt her break in my arms, my anger dissolving into something softer and more painful, because underneath all the chaos, she was still my sister. When the officers finally separated us to take statements, the world slowed into fragments. Lily crying into my coat, Jackson gripping Alex like he was afraid to let go, Daniel giving a trembling explanation to detectives, Mia handcuffed not in arrest but for her own safety, and Theo gone. He had slipped away in the confusion, but the officers promised he won't get far. Hours passed. Patrol cars lined the street. The kids slept in a blanket the officers gave them. And as dawn crept over Seattle's skyline, coloring the sky gold, a detective finally approached me and said, "We've seen the files on the drive. You saved more than your sister tonight." I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt tired, bone-deep tired. But as I looked at Lily sleeping on my lap, Jackson curled beside her, Mia sitting beside us with tear-swollen eyes and hands still trembling, I realized something else. Family isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other even when everything is falling apart. I squeezed my sister's hand and whispered, "Next time you need help, just ask." She let out a shaky laugh, eyes full of regret and gratitude. "Next time, I'll do everything right." And as the sun rose, warming the cold alley where everything nearly shattered, I finally felt it, safety. Fragile, shaky, but real. Because we survived. Because we were together. And because the worst night of our lives ended with the truth, not a grave.